Welcome to the Hot Take channel. I recently took on a debate champion in regards to the issue of gun control and feel like I made it out. I made out. I made it out pretty well. Um, so let's jump into it. So to start, went ahead and presented the point of view that he is pro gun control. So he believes that gun control is necessary to ensure the safety of our community and to reduce the number of gun-related incidents that occur every year. So I went ahead and responded to that with kind of defining what a community is. Community is people that are trying to live in harmony, as well as those who seek to disrupt peace and safety, criminals. Because there are millions of people committing crimes, I believe you should allow the vast majority who are not committing crimes to protect themselves with a gun. And I went on to where he said, I went off of where he said instances. And by instances, he means a criminal using a gun to disrupt society. And you can't reduce those because criminals still get guns. So he went on to agree. It is true that most people are responsible gun owners who don't commit crimes. However, there are still some individuals who use guns to cause harm to others, and this issue needs to be addressed. Having citizens with guns could be a deterrent to some criminals, but it could also lead to more violence and unnecessary deaths. I point out unnecessary later on. Plus, it would not be fair to expect citizens with guns to solve a situation involving a criminal with a gun. And also he goes on to say he believes that gun control would be effective at reducing the number of gun-related crimes. That word crimes. So I went in to say individuals who harm others isn't a gun problem. It's a problem with that person and why they have to use violence to threaten people's safety. I agree that guns could be a deterrent to some people, but also that it needs to be a last resort measure where a law-abiding citizen who uses violence against a criminal who would normally seek to harm him. And the word unnecessary, unfortunate, yes, it would be an unfortunate death if the criminal dies, but unnecessary, only the criminal can make that decision. If the person defending their life felt like they were in harm, it's unfortunate that they had to kill the criminal, but it was unnecessary for the criminal to break into their home. You can't decide if, unfortunately, somebody breaks into your home. You couldn't have prevented that. So, goes on to say, again agrees, you make a very good point. The people are the cause of violence and not guns. Guns are just a method used by people to cause harm. Even if we were to regulate people instead of regulating guns, it would still be more difficult to regulate people than it would be to regulate guns. And he again agrees that guns can be a deterrent to violence. However, he still believes that gun control would be a more effective way to reduce gun-related crimes. That if we make it harder for people to get guns, it would be more difficult for criminals to get guns as well. So I went ahead and responded with this one. A victim protecting themselves is self-defense, no crime. So a lot of times the gun control advocate was saying that they were preventing crimes. But if a person uses a gun to protect themselves, no crime is committed. I mean, gun control would only work when you take guns out of the hands of those committing a crime, because they are the ones committing a crime. People with guns in self-defense are committing no crimes. And I also went ahead and when he said that it's unfair to have people make that decision, I of course responded with, let citizens decide whether or not it is fair for them to be able to use force to protect themselves when criminals force violence on them and other innocent parties. So he went ahead and continued. He was not sure he followed my logic in saying that since a victim protecting themselves is self-defense, no crime was committed. Because like I said, a victim protecting themselves is self-defense, whereas no crime was committed. That's exactly what I said. So he goes on to say, self-defense is an individual act of protecting oneself from imminent violence or threat of violence by an aggressor. True. However, the crime was still committed. I don't agree with that. I don't believe a crime was committed if they were found to be acting in self-defense. And he says that the individual defending himself had to resort to violence to protect himself from danger or harm. And there's still crime involved in this scenario. I had to repeat myself. The person protecting themselves did not resort to a crime in order to protect themselves. They resorted to violence. Violence is not the same as a crime. A criminal commits assault when they attack an innocent person. If that innocent person fights back, they are not committing the crime of assault. So the crime has only happened when it's considered unwarranted or unjustified. And he goes ahead and responds again. You are correct that violence and crime are two different things. Violence is behavior or actions that have the potential to cause physical harm or injury to another person. Crime is the violation of a law or legal code. Self-defense is considered to be a lawful use of violence, hence no crime, which is what I said. However, even though self-defense is a lawful behavior, it is still a violent act, which is why I went on to say violence and crime are not the same things. At this point, I just straight up asked, do you concede that gun control is not in the best interest because self-defense is lawful even when using violence from a gun? I tried to end it right here. So he goes on to say, in his opinion, gun control is still in the best interest of the country because it helps prevent gun-related crimes. And again, I said a crime is only committed when the aggressor is using the weapon, where he said if you take weapons away from all people, then it would be harder for the criminals to get them as well. He also saying including those acts as well as people ending it themselves, which I've definitely felt like was, for lack of a better word, a low blow. That's why I didn't respond to that, and I'm not going into it with this video. I just believe he shouldn't have brought that up because that's been debunked by numerous other people. And he goes on that self-defense can still be a lawful act, but it does not need to involve the same force as a gun. And here's where he goes into individuals could use other methods of self-defense, such as pepper spray. And I had to repeat myself. Again, a crime is not committed when a victim uses a gun to defend themselves if it's considered self-defense. A crime is not committed when a person owns a gun and deters a criminal. A crime is committed if a criminal gets a gun unlawfully. And a crime is committed when the criminal uses a gun that they weren't supposed to even have. Again, those are the only crimes. And again, if it's self-defense, it's not the crime. And I went on to say, if you're debating both sides should be equal, how do you justify a victim attempting to use pepper spray, which may or may not work, or even takes a while to work? Even though they were innocent, they have a less of a chance of stopping an attacker with non-lethal force than the attacker succeeding with killing them. And he goes on again to respond, I understand and agree that laws regarding weapons and self-defense vary, but I was merely trying to point out that gun control would be more effective in preventing gun-related crimes. And here's where I pretty much feel like I would have won the debate. This is another instance of when the debate master simply goes to saying it would prevent the crimes. I've already showed there's a difference between crimes and violence. The crime is when the attacker uses it. He goes on to say the point he was trying to make is that it is possible to defend yourself without resorting to lethal force. So it is possible to defend yourself against a gun with pepper spray, but again, why would you have to put yourself with less of a chance of succeeding in saving your life and allowing the attacker who has a gun to have a higher chance of success of ending yours? And he went on to say, non-lethal methods of self-defense like pepper spray can be effective deterrents against criminals with guns. Also, gun control would make it more difficult for criminals to acquire guns, which would make them less likely to use them in the first place. And then I'm about to go on to this, because he's saying take guns away from everybody, and then the small percentage of criminals couldn't get them. And I repeat it, leave it up to the victim who is trying to stay alive whether or not they feel that using lethal force would increase their chances of survival if they are attacked, and whether or not they want to try something less effective, like a non-lethal pepper spray. Some people may just decide to use non-lethal, but allow the people who want to respond to lethal with lethal force that option. And I address the issue of it'd be harder for them to acquire guns by taking them from everyone. Is why does gun control have to leave 95% of the people with less effective non-lethal force just to try to stop the 5% who are committing crimes? And then he responded with, it's important to balance the rights of law-abiding citizens with the need for public safety. Additionally, more guns in the hands of civilians could also lead to a higher risk of accidental shootings. So now he went from crime to people injuring themselves or accidental shootings. So he keeps changing his position, his strong ground. He's still looking for it. And in the end, it is a balancing act between freedom and safety. So at this point, I once again say I feel as though I have won this debate. You keep repeating it would be harder for criminals to have guns. That is not a strong enough argument for gun control. And then he goes ahead and follows up with, I respect your opinion and your argument for self-defense with a gun is valid. So he's saying that my argument for self-defense with a gun is valid. However, he thinks that it is important to consider the wider implications of gun control, including public safety, the rights of law-abiding citizens, and the potential for more accidental shootings and gun violence. Again, gun violence when protecting yourself is justified, and accidental shootings, along with hurting yourself, is not the same foundation that he started with. And I would just believe he's looking for any other reasoning now just to keep the debate going. And he continued with, in the end, it's a matter of balancing freedom and safety and finding a middle ground between the two. So I used what he said. I believe that a middle ground would be the innocent person using lethal force if the attacker is using lethal force. And repeat it again, gun violence is not the same as gun crime. If you want to prevent gun violence of self-defense, which is what he's saying, gun violence is self-defense. And he was advocating for stopping gun violence, which is advocating to stop self-defense. And then in that sense, you are going to increase gun crime. If you stop the violence of people protecting themselves, you are going to increase the crime of the attacker. And I finished off with freedom is using violence to protect yourself from a crime, and that shouldn't be limited to pepper spray. He followed up with that is, you are right that gun violence and gun crime are not the same. Again, he agrees. Gun crime is a violation of law that involves the misuse of a gun. Agreed. Gun violence is the act of using a gun to hurt or kill someone. While it is a fundamental right for someone to protect themselves from a crime, using lethal force should be a last resort option when all other options have been exhausted. Here's where I may have gotten in the weeds. He's the debate champion is trying to say, if pepper spray doesn't work, then you can resort to a gun. But if you don't have a gun, you can't resort to this last line of defense. So the pro gun control advocate is advocating that that you should have the right of lethal force. If I'm reading this correctly, they are saying that you can use lethal force. You can use the gun that you own if your pepper spray doesn't work. So again, it feels like the gun control advocate admitted to defeat. So I respond with, okay, so if you agree that lethal force can be used to protect yourself, and that would be in the form of a gun, even as a last resort, why do you insist on maintaining this quest for gun control? And here's the end. I followed through with, you have presented your side, and I have presented mine. You agreed on many of the points that I made, and then asked him, is this simply two opinions who will clash and produce no resolve? He responded with, we may not agree on everything, but we have both stated our opinions and defended our opinions. So I respond with, what about when the foundation of one's argument is not as strong as the other side? I have defended my position with ideas that the counter opinions was unable to counter or dismiss. Their position on gun control does not have a strong foundation, as evidenced by changing to accidental shootings and misinterpreting the words violence and crime. And even with those, I presented them with strong counter arguments. The debate champion finished up with, in the end, you are correct that we both defended our positions and didn't give in to the other side's arguments. I respect your willingness to express your opinions, and I understand where you are coming from. If this debate was not satisfactory to you, then my apologies. And I believe that last sentence is pretty important. Respect the willingness to express opinions. A lot of times that's all we can really ask for, and understand where the other side is coming from. I listened to what they said and they countered. I believe they could have listened to where I was coming from a little better and not repeated so much stuff. But if they were honest in respecting the willingness of opinion and understanding the other side, well, that's all we can ask for. And moving forward, this would be a good template to, when we have debates, kind of go with these two things. Respect the opinions and understand where the other person is coming from. Thank you.